Thomas, come quick! A woman in the corridor there!
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 biggest horror movie flops of all time.
Man, you sure know a lot about monsters.
Now that you mention it, I suppose I do.
For this list, we'll be looking at the worst box office bombs in the horror genre. Did you support any of these films? Let us know in the comments below.
Hey Mojoholics! For a chance to win cash prizes, play our live daily trivia challenges every day at 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern only at WatchMojo.com/play.
Number 20, Beau Is Afraid.
I am so sorry for what your daddy passed down to you.
This film was destined to fail, but we have to praise A24 for giving it a shot. While it stars box office draw Joaquin Phoenix, Beau Is Afraid is a bizarre and uncompromising piece of horror surrealism spanning 3 hours in length. It's not exactly The Avengers, you know? Not only was it generally unmarketable, but it received relatively lukewarm reviews, at least compared to Ari Aster's previous 2 films, Hereditary and Midsommar. It had a budget of $35 million, but made less than 1/3 of that back. Beau is afraid of many things, and those box office numbers should be one of them.
Roger's a very respected surgeon. He's the one who dressed and treated your wounds.
Number 19, The Invasion.
Try to calm down. You can fool them, but you gotta calm down. Don't show emotion.
This sci-fi horror film starring Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig is the 4th adaptation of the Body Snatchers novel. As you can imagine, patience for the story was wearing a little thin, especially considering the classic nature of the 1978 version. There were several problems going into this film. Not only had the story been told and retold over the years, but it received terrible reviews for its pacing and emphasis on action over tension. You could say that it's a hollow and emotionless shell of something more complex. Sounds familiar? Warner Bros. Was banking hard on the film, giving it a budget between $65 million and $80 million. Unfortunately, it only recouped $40 million at the box office.
Doesn't hurt. Watch. It's just like catching a cold.
Number 18, Crimes of the Future.
Did you sleep?
I think this bed needs new software.
David Cronenberg is one of the biggest names in the scary movie biz, known for classic body horror films like The Fly and Videodrome. But even the masters make the odd financial dud. Released in 2022, Crimes of the Future stars Viggo Mortensen and Léa Seydoux as performance artists who wow audiences with a particularly grotesque act. The film was made for $27 million, but did not have the release to show for it. It opened in less than 800 theatres and finished in 10th with just $1.1 million. It spent only 1 week inside the top 10 before finishing with a very disappointing take of $4.6 million.
Human evolution is the concern, that it's going wrong, that it's uncontrolled, it's insurrectional. It might lead us to a bad place.
Number 17, Crimson Peak.
Goodness, how many rooms are there?
I don't know. Would you like to count them?
Guillermo del Toro, Victorian times, and a Gothic mansion. Who doesn't want to see that? Well, a lot of people apparently. A traditional haunted house tale, Crimson Peak contains a great cast and some truly unforgettable visuals. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough to put butts in seats. For whatever reason, Crimson Peak greatly underperformed. Many analysts argued that it faced too much competition at the box office, especially in the midst of overperforming films like Bridge of Spies that were not expected to do so well. It grossed $74 million on a budget of $55 million, so while not an outright bomb, it was definitely not what Universal was hoping for.
Don't do it!
Number 16, Village of the Damned.
You alright?
Yeah. It was just a dream.
When John Wyndham's The Midwich Cuckoos was first adapted for the big screen in 1960 under the title Village of the Damned, it turned a respectable profit, earned critical acclaim, and even produced a sequel.
I can't believe it.
This is not a matter of belief, Vicar, it's a matter of fact.
Sadly, none of those statements can be applied to this 1995 remake, which, considering it was helmed by filmmaker John Carpenter, is more than a little disappointing. Against a budget of $22 million, it only managed to recoup $9.4 million domestically, and was critically panned as uninspired, a paint-by-numbers remake without merit of its own.
We have to survive no matter what the cost.
The film went on to earn a Razzie nomination and has been called by John Carpenter, in hindsight, a simple contractual assignment, nothing more.
There's no need for you to become emotional.
Number 15, The Monster Squad.
Where you going, Rudy?
I'm in the goddamn club, aren't I?
This horror comedy from director Fred Decker attempted to revitalise the Universal monsters for a new generation. It did not do so. Reviews were tepid, and it faced a number of obstacles at the box office. The PG-13 rating prevented younger viewers from getting in, and it was unfairly compared to other popular teen movies of the time, like The Goonies. Furthermore, it faced intense competition from The Lost Boys, which covered a similar premise but aimed for a more mature audience. With a budget of $14 million, The Monster Squad was a catastrophic failure. It opened in 12th place and was pulled after just 2 weeks, finishing with a gross of just $3.8 million.
He always returns from the grave. If they blew him up, put his head in a blender, and mailed the rest of the pieces to Norway, he would still return from the grave.
That was part 7.
Number 14, Bad Moon. Have you ever heard of this movie? Exactly.
I don't know, Janet. You know, big predators, they can travel a long distance if their habitat runs dry.
Bad Moon, as you may surmise from its title, is a werewolf film about photojournalist Ted Harrison, who turns into the scary beast and stalks his sister and nephew. The movie was poorly received upon release, with criticisms aimed at the messy tone and unconvincing monster effects. Bad Moon opened in over 800 theatres, but failed to break $1 million, grossing just $607,000. This gave it a per-theatre average of $735. Compare this to its opening rival, Romeo and Juliet, which had a per-theatre average of over $8,700. Bad Moon went on to gross a paltry $1.1 million against a $7 million budget.
Yes, you know. The handcuffs won't keep my little secret any longer.
Number 13, The Apparition.
We're attempting our own high-tech version of the Charles experiment. Unlike the scientific seance from the 1970s, our goal is to manifest the spirit into our world.
This horror movie, starring Ashley Greene, was released in late August, and that is never a good sign. The Apparition is a by-the-numbers ghost tale that's loosely based on the so-called Philip experiment. Conducted in Toronto, it aimed to see if participants could interact with a fictional ghost, in this case the completely made-up Philip Ellsford. By all accounts, that real story is far more interesting than this film. The Apparition was widely lambasted for virtually every aspect of its production, resulting in just a 3% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Despite a budget of $17 million, the film opened in 12th place and never broke into the top 10. It finished its run with a take of just over $11 million.
It wants to be in our world. It wants us. It feeds on life. It'll punish you. It'll manipulate the way you see the world. And it takes you. We opened the door and it came through.
Number 12, Suspiria.
She's tough. She kept the company alive through the war. When the Reich just wanted women to shut off their minds and keep their uteruses open.
This was a hard sell if there ever was one. Dario Argento's original is a classic, but Italian Giallo isn't exactly one of the more mainstream horror subgenres. The new Suspiria is also really weird, has a lot of heavy themes, and runs at a languid pace for 2.5 hours. It's certainly not for everyone, and that shows in its theatrical run. Reviews were lukewarm, with many calling it an inferior to the original, and it never placed higher than 19th at the box office. With a budget of $20 million, Suspiria fell flat with a gross of just under $8 million. The poor performance was recognised by director Luca Guadagnino, who called it a disaster at the box office.
Aber dass Leute sich manchmal zusammenschließen, Verbrechen zu begehen und das dann Magie nennen.
Number 11, Alone in the Dark. Uwe Boll does not have a good track record. In 2003, he released the widely condemned House of the Dead, which served as an adaptation of the popular arcade video game. But of his many widely detested films, Alone in the Dark is a standout. Why? Well, for starters, its poor quality and loose approach to the source material enraged fans of the long-running video game franchise.
Carrying enough baggage for the both of us, trust me.
It wasn't just those familiar with the source material who hated the movie, though. Critics considered it to be one of the worst films ever made. With a budget of $20 million, it saw a return of just $10.4 million.
This isn't happening. Doesn't make any sense.
Unfortunately, it succeeded in the home video market and therefore got a sequel in 2008.
After all these years, I'm immune to witchcraft crap.
Number 10, Slither.
Hey, Kylie, why don't you tell Miss Grant that story about how I saved you from that deer?
Oh, yeah. Bill saved me from a deer. Oh, yeah?
Before he established himself as a major player in the MCU with Guardians of the Galaxy, James Gunn crafted this excellent little horror movie about a parasitic alien and its slug-like offspring. Funny, scary, original, and boasting a strong cast including Nathan Fillion, Elizabeth Banks, and Michael Rooker, Slither was warmly received by critics and horror enthusiasts alike.
Oh, that's awesome!
Unfortunately, for whatever reason, people just didn't go to see it. Though it was made on a modest budget of $15 million, it slipped through the cracks and failed to break even.
I said, things like this happens to people all the time.
Number 9, Willard.
They're stirring up rats.
Well, have you been to the basement?
Oh, you know I can't.
For the average cinema goer, Crispin Glover is probably most recognisable as the guy ripping and sniffing hair in Charlie's Angels, or as George McFly in Back to the Future. But within horror circles, he's best known for his role in this underappreciated remake about a social outcast who befriends and trains rats. The movie wasn't exactly a critical darling, but it was still reasonably well received. Glover's performance as the titular Willard was particularly well met, earning him a nomination in the category of Best Actor at the Saturn Awards.
Sit down.
Now you listen to me, Willard.
Sit down!
Unfortunately, that didn't translate into ticket sales, with the box office falling $11.5 million short of its own budget.
You know I cannot afford that! You know that!
Number 8, Renfield.
We are the last of our kind. From now on, every drop of blood Dracula spills will be on your hands.
You know, maybe we should give the old Universal monsters a break. A fresh take on the Dracula mythos, Renfield experienced a delayed release following the infamous bombing of The Mummy. Hoping to bounce off of the beloved IP while still standing alone as a unique horror comedy, Renfield opened to a collective shrug in the spring of 2023. The reviews were not stellar, and it faced a lot of fierce competition at the box office, playing against the likes of John Wick Chapter 4 and the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Renfield spent just 2 weeks inside the top 10 and grossed roughly $26 million on a $65 million budget. We think the titular character is going to remain in the coffin for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I'm not even 100% sure this will kill him. But I do know it will take him a long, long time to come back from.
Number 7, Fear.com. It was the early 2000s. The internet was past its introductory phase and was in the process of becoming the all-encompassing force that it is today. In other words, it was the perfect basis for a horror film.
I sent it in for repair.
Playing on the internet too much, right?
Yeah.
Though it bears similarities to technophobic films that preceded it, like Videodrome and Ringu, Fear.com lacks the substance to support all the over-the-top violence. The movie is admittedly stylish at times, but not enough to overcome a fundamentally flawed script. A co-production between companies from the US, UK and Germany, it cost $40 million and only recouped $18.9 million of it.
Too bad this show always has the same ending.
No, not this time.
Number 6, The Rage, CARRIE 2. Honestly, it shouldn't have mattered that this movie was a blatant cash grab and terrible film. That's most horror movie sequels. Just by virtue of having CARRIE in the title, this movie should have been able to turn a tidy little profit. CARRIE is one of the most iconic movies in the history of the genre.
Are you sure that you're not still trying to save a girl that died 20 years ago?
Even with Amy Irving returning to her role as Sue Snell to create some sense of legitimate connection, the film was a pale imitation of its namesake, and cinemagoers could clearly see that.
Man, we're all friends here. We're all friends. It's cool.
No, we just grew up together.
Despite coming from illustrious stock, CARRIE 2 only managed to scrape together $17.8 million against its budget of $21 million. Number 5. Virus.
You are Virus.
This movie just might be the biggest sci-fi horror comic book adaptation you've never heard of. A whole line of toys was planned around it. The movie even had a video game tie-in in the works. With Jamie Lee Curtis in the leading role as Kelly Foster, it also had a viable lead to catch the attention of cinemagoers.
My name's Kelly Foster. I'm a navigator.
On paper, it sounded like an entertaining, if not overtly original premise. An energy-based alien life form comes to Earth with plans of conquest via human extinction.
Touch it again, I'll cut your hands off.
I can respect that.
The end result? Well, the visual effects were top-notch, but that's about it. The film was critically panned and earned just over $30 million on a budget of $75 million. Yikes.
They're planning to sink the ship. Of course, you know that, don't you?
Number 4. Grindhouse.
If you're gonna hire Machete to kill the bad guy, you better make damn sure the bad guy isn't you.
We can really appreciate what Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino were trying to do here. Grindhouse theatres of old specialised in B-movies and exploitation films.
And Nicolas Cage as Fu Manchu.
These institutions were cheap, dedicated to high volume, and provided a home to the sort of cinema that goes straight to home media these days.
I made you something. I do believe in you.
The concept of a double feature is also largely dead nowadays, but for nostalgic filmmakers like these two, it's one that still holds appeal. Though cinephiles may have appreciated this throwback release, it didn't resonate with the majority of cinemagoers.
I am not one to be taunted. You got it?
With a combined budget of $53 million, and despite solid reviews, Death Proof and Planet Terror only managed to recoup $25.4 million. Number 3. Event Horizon.
When the spacecraft passes through the gateway, space returns to normal. It's called a gravity drive.
This film has even become something of a cult classic within the sci-fi horror genre, but with a budget of $60 million and a domestic box office take of $26.7 million, it was a serious flop. With Jurassic Park actor Sam Neill, a pre-Morpheus Lawrence Fishburne on board, and a fresh-faced Paul W.S. Anderson in the director's chair, Paramount had big expectations.
You don't want to leave your ship? You never will.
At the time, Anderson had just released Mortal Kombat, which proved to be a hit at the box office. For his next act, he chose Event Horizon. And, well, after post-production hell, it didn't make it out of the black hole.
This ship has been beyond the boundaries of our universe, of known scientific reality. Who knows where it's been?
Number 2. The Wolfman.
What kind of animal could have done such a thing?
I've seen the work of a Kodiak bear and a Bengal tiger. Nature at its most vicious, but must say I've never seen anything like this.
If there's one overarching theme to this list, it's that modern audiences really don't want Universal monster remakes. 2010's The Wolfman has a few good things going for it. There's an all-star cast consisting of Benicio del Toro, Emily Blunt, and Anthony Hopkins, and it contains Oscar-winning makeup effects by Rick Baker. Regardless, both audiences and critics bared their teeth at the film. And despite a box office gross of $142 million, it still bombed owing to its $150 million budget. Even the then president of Universal hated the movie, saying it was one of the worst movies they ever made. That's when you know it's a failure.
It is glorious, isn't it?
No, it's hell.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Psycho.
A boy's best friend's his mother.
This is another oddity in the history of horror films. Though remakes are common, updates usually try to reinterpret the material. When Gus Van Sant decided to revisit the classic Hitchcock tale of theft, murder, and mummy issues, he chose to show his reverence for the original by remaking it shot for shot, just with a different cast and in colour.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
Like with Carrie 2, you'd think that any remake of such a classic film would have a guaranteed draw, but ultimately Van Sant's ode to the original turned audiences off, and only managed to earn back $37.1 million against a bloated budget of $60 million.
They'll see. They'll see and they'll know. And they'll say, why she wouldn't even harm a fly.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.